Good morning and welcome to the news on New Day, live from the John Hammond Street at Kanda here in Accra. My name is Judith Awoche Tando. Coming up this morning. Parliamentary candidates for Assin North, James Gyakye Quayson, to wait until June 21 to determine if his trial adjournment request will be upheld. Also coming up, civil society organizations oppose potential rent co-assessment management 6 years lease of Tema Oil Refinery. Ghana National Association of Teachers calls for national dialogue after 6,000 teachers failed licensure exams. And on the international front, more than 20 people arrested in Uganda, accused of collaborating with the rebel group blamed for carrying out the school massacre. Details of these stories and more coming up shortly. Please do stay with us. And our first story, the National House of Chiefs has called for a review of the President's appointment of the Chief Justice. The traditional leaders advocate for a reverse Chief Justice election following the old convention where the longest-serving Supreme Court judge became the Chief Justice, arguing that junior selection of a senior could be demoralizing and undermine integrity.
The Chief Justice here in Ghana is done by the President in consultation with the Council of State and then a vetting and approval from Parliament. According to the 1992 Constitution, there have been calls for a review of this process, and the National House of Chiefs did not mince words.
The view is that it should be the most senior judge instead of this power of appointment by the President. When I was called to the bar, it was almost invariably the judge who was next in seniority to the Chief Justice who became the Chief Justice. Mr. Justice Apalu was then the Chief Justice. His position was taken over by Justice Soa, came Justice Archer. And then after Justice Archer, Justice Aban. It was just following that convention.
The chiefs have argued that this is not only demoralizing, but it also questions the confidence and integrity of the Supreme Court.
Because of the fact that the Supreme Court is a human institution. Picture this. I have worked in the Supreme Court for all these years, and it is now my turn by virtue of the fact that I am next in seniority to the incumbent. Suddenly, I am passed over. Maybe a relatively junior is over me as Chief Justice. Naturally, such a person would feel demoralized. We would suggest that we could go back to that unwritten convention. If he was qualified enough to be appointed to the Supreme Court, I think he is qualified enough to become Chief Justice.
Now moving on, NDC parliamentary candidates for Assin North, James Gyakye Quayson, must wait until June 21 to determine if his trial adjournment request will be upheld. Lord Iduasare sat through the court proceedings and reports.
It was a massive show of support as several constituents from the Assin North thronged the Accra High Court complex to show support to the parliamentary candidate James Gyakye Quayson. Several leading members of the National Democratic Congress also came in their numbers to throw their weight behind James Gyakye Quayson. Lead counsel for the deposed Member of Parliament, Chachi Chikata, had told the court that Attorney General had used some insulting and unjustifiable words against his client, referring to him as irresponsible. But Deputy Attorney General Alfred Tia told the court that the person of the Attorney General had been attacked by the opposition counsel.
Alfred Tiaeba also prayed the court for additional time to study and respond to the motion filed by counsel for James Gyakye Quayson, since his office had not received the application, and urged that the cross-examination of the state witness continue. But lead counsel for the deposed Assin North MP, Chachi Chikata, objected to hearing application before prosecution continues cross-examination of witness, arguing it would be unfair. Presiding Judge Mary Mami Ekwe Yanzu adjourned proceedings to Wednesday, June 21 for the motion to be heard.
It's not about he not being allowed to contest the elections. He has a right to contest. The state also has a right to hear cases pending in court.
Head of Legal Affairs of the NDC, Ibrahim Amaleba, had concerns about the position of the Attorney General.
To call somebody irresponsible when it's embarked on a democratic process. If you're a Minister of Justice, you must ensure that justice is done to all manner of persons.
Let's stay in court now. The third defendant in the ambulance procurement case, Richard Agyapa, narrowly avoided being found in contempt of court after making a flagrant disrespectful gesture toward the judge overseeing the case. Lodido Asare reports.
The court had subpoenaed the head of dispute resolution at Stanbic Bank, Henry Miles Mills, to appear in court and submit records pertaining to a term loan agreement between the government and Big C Limited regarding the sale and purchase of the 200 ambulances. Richard Agyapa requested permission from the court to use the restroom during cross-examination by the counsel for Ato Forson, but was turned down by presiding judge Ifeasewa Asare-Botwe. He was eventually given permission to leave the courtroom with an escort to use the restroom. Richard Agyapa became enraged at the court for the initial refusal to let him use the restroom when the judge, Ifeasewa, offered him a hand sanitizer as a show of assistance. After a brief ruckus in the courtroom, the judge issued a warning to Richard Agyapa that she would not hesitate to use the contempt of court powers if he ever committed another act of disrespect. Agypa's lead counsel, Thomas Orban, expressed regret for his client's behavior before the accused individually owned regret to the court. The witness was dismissed by the court and the case has been adjourned until June 22. Lodido Asare, TV3 News, Accra.
Still in court, it was another trying moment for police to overcome irate relatives and friends of the slain Victoria Dapaah, who was also known as Majwa, at the Sokore Mampon District Court. Now, the accused person, Inspector Ahmed Chumesi, pleaded not guilty to the murder of the 26-year-old lady and sparked intense anger in and outside the courtroom.
It was the first time Inspector Ahmed Chumesi's plea was taken in an open court. Family, friends of Victoria Dapaah, also known as Majwa, appeared anxious, waiting to hear for the first time from the prime suspect, who stands accused. After his charge of murder was read to him by the state attorney, Ernest Aye, he stood for a while and in a soft voice pleaded not guilty. Also declined to respond to the murder charges as contained in complainant statement and evidence gathered by investigators. Inspector Ahmed Chumesi told the court he would only respond to the charges in the presence of his lawyer. Next hearing will be at the High Court on July 13.
Now, away from courts, residents of Tamale and adjoining communities are bracing themselves for a looming water shortage following power disconnection of the Dalong water treatment plant by NEDCO. Now, according to the power distribution company, Ghana Water Company owes them over 39 million cedis in electricity bills.
Water treatment plant is the biggest treatment plant in the northern region and supplies water to residents in Tamale and its environs.
These tanker drivers and their vehicles have been waiting here since morning, hoping to get water to supply to their customers.
Frankly speaking, it's affecting us because some people come here to demand for the water, but due to that, that's happened at the Dalong Center, they are not able to pump water to us.
The Tamale Teaching Hospital is one of the facilities that is expected to be heavily hit if the situation is not immediately addressed.
Because the underground reserve facility that I mentioned, in the next 2 days, if we don't get supplies, then it means that we're going to run out of water. If you look at some of the medical equipment we use here, they are very sensitive, especially to death. And so because of that, we are unable to use water from any other source apart from Ghana Water. They treat the water they pump to us. It's going to be a huge issue for us.
Sachet water business will not also be spared.
Because in Tamale we have about 2% of the total producers using borehole water. So the rest of the 98% would not have water to produce.
Christopher Mwako, TV3 News, Tamale.
In other news now, and stakeholders have highlighted illegal mining and deforestation as key factors contributing to climate change and its negative impact on food production and the environment. At an environmental sustainability summit in Accra, participants called for policy implementation, monitoring and collective effort from government and the public to curb the situation.
Climate change is a long-term statistical changes affecting value chains and food systems, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa. These changes pose significant threats to human existence, including water scarcity, food insecurity, extreme heat, flooding, and economic losses. It is critical to implement measures to prevent or control these threats.
Failing to take action and delaying effort to address climate change can have catastrophic consequences for the food and agricultural sectors.
A lecturer at the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Sunyani, Dr. Caleb Mensah commented on the application of technology.
The use of drones, the use of remote sensed data, that's the geospatial data, at least it's able to give a very wide coverage, and even how we are able to use some of these fertilizers where we are supposed to use the amount. All of these, we're able to determine that, because at least the farmer is able to make well-informed decisions.
Now, Chief Executive Officer of the Consumer Protection Agency, Kofi Kapito, has urged the public to pressure for the passage of a consumer protection bill to protect consumers and producer interests. Now, he was speaking at a public forum in Accra.
The Consumer Protection Bill seeks to create a fair marketplace that works for consumers in terms of their economic interests, welfare, health and safety. It will promote, protect and enforce the rights of consumers as well as regulating matters related to violation of consumer rights, unfair trade practices and misleading advertisement. It also aims at providing a consistent, predictable and effective framework that fosters consumer confidence and capacity in line with international best practices. Ghana's consumers face threats from poor business practices and poor quality goods and services, while electronic commerce has altered transaction dynamics, sometimes causing adverse effects on consumers. Chief Executive Officer of the Consumer Protection Agency, Kofi Kapito, emphasized the urgent need for a consumer protection bill to safeguard consumers, service providers and commodity producers' interests in post-transactions.
Every 4 years when we go for election, no matter what you've done, you have to start all over again. So we were very, very grateful when we heard the caretaker minister, Abu Jinapo, on the floor of Parliament saying that the time has come that this bill needs to be passed. Let's ask members of Parliament to see that the bill becomes a reality.
He advised consumers to be responsible and cautious when purchasing.
The cardinal principle of consumerism is the buyer beware. So if you are going to buy something and you don't do due diligence to make sure that it is the right thing, you might have a domain. Now, electronic business is not done locally. So we consumers, you also have a responsibility.
Let's do some education stories now. The National Teaching Council claims over 6,000 teachers who fail the licensure exams are not cut out for the profession. However, the Ghana National Association of Teachers is calling for a national dialogue on the mass failure rather than accusing the teachers.
Sometimes it's funny. You see candidates who could not write the exam who go and write, please help me, a teacher. Write in the script, help me, my telephone number is this, I'll compensate you. So we will need to investigate. Such candidates are invited and we investigate them, so we withhold their results. Recently, the recent one they wrote, somebody wrote a prophet name instead of writing an essay. He just wrote a prophet's name there, thinking that a miracle will occur for him to pass. By November, they have the chance to sit for the last time for this particular kind of exam. If they are not successful, then they have to transition to the new one that is coming. What makes this one challenging to those people is that some of them might have passed one paper or two papers out of the three. Yeah. But the moment you are transitioning to the new system, the new dispensation, it means you have to forgo those two that you passed or the one that you passed. I don't have any power to stop anybody from going anywhere. But the process is that if you are dissatisfied with the results and you want a remark, you pay your remark fee, and then we give you the chance, and then we appoint neutral examiners.
We need to look at the entering qualification, number one. We look at the training institution. We look at NTC itself. We look at the tech and the student themselves. This is the chain. We cannot exempt anyone at this particular point in time because we want to get it right. And because we want to get it right, we need to look at all the things that happened within the process. And that will help us understand the issues.
Graduates from the colleges of education have to pass the licensure exam before they can be recruited into the Ghana Education Service.
Let's do sports now. And sports journalist and former director of communications at the Ghana Football Association, Ibrahim Sani Dara, wants Asamoah Gyan to stay glued to football and football businesses even in his retirement. While acknowledging Asamoah's role in other economic ventures, he maintained that his continuous dedication to football will make a great difference for him and for Ghana.
Asamoah Gyan as a player is a highly focused individual on the task ahead. As a human being outside the field of play, he was a very, very jovial person and a nice person to be around. Somebody who enjoys life, wanted to live life to the fullest. I don't think he will completely leave the football field. He will transmute into becoming perhaps a football agent. He's also got some punditry work to be done. So I expect him to continue on this path. He's also got a lot of businesses in the food and drinks industry, in several other sectors of the economy of Ghana. And I think that he'll effortlessly combine the two so he can keep his spirit and soul together. All of these things and the experiences he's had on the playing field will guide him to success in his post-playing career. I want him to focus on the football industry because football is what people know Asamoah Gyan for. And this is where I think he can profit the most. He's got a lot of talent. He's got a lot of knowledge in the game. And I think that when he focuses on what he has started with the Baby Jet training camp that recently ended, he would be able to discover talents for Ghana that would bode well for the national team and would also make some decent money for him. I think there are lots of lessons they can take from the life of Asamoah Gyan. First of all, hard work pays. I saw this myself. I remember a couple of years ago, I went to visit him in Sunderland. While the taxi driver was driving me to his house, in the middle of nowhere, in winter, early in the morning, I saw a black guy in a hoodie jogging. Asamoah had gone on his own personal training before he would join his team's training at 9 o'clock. And this thing tells me that people don't become great for no reason. And this is one lesson I want the next generation, the next crop of players to take up to him.
Now, on the international front, more than 20 people arrested in Uganda in connection with a school massacre have been accused of collaborating with a rebel group blamed for carrying out the killings. Now, among those held are the director and head teacher who have not commented. Now, officials say there may have been a dispute over the ownership of the school where the 42 people died. The army say Islamic State-linked militants were behind the attack, but other motives are being investigated. They belong to the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, a group created in the 1990s and took up arms against President Yoweri Museveni, alleging persecution of Muslims. It is now largely based in neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo.